up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest as we kick off yet another week of this NBA offseason. I wanted to start today's show with yesterday's news from ESPN Shams Charania. Bulls head coach Billy Donovan officially signed a multi-year extension with the Bulls yesterday. Shams reported on the extension, and it has been reached, but did not reveal the length or financial terms of the contract. Of no surprise there. That's just not how the Bulls have done business. They did the same with Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley and their extensions they received just before the draft here. So when you look at the Bulls and Billy, they started negotiations at the end of this past season, and those continued through this past week amid the offseason planning, a brief pursuit by the Knicks, the draft, free agency, and now the summer league coming to a close. Despite the Bulls' struggles under Billy Donovan, the organization values his leadership. I've talked about this since the start of my show, and just kind of how he exhibits that leadership across every level of the franchise. He'll enter his sixth season in Chicago in 2025-26. He has now coached 800 NBA games over his career. His record in Chicago, and I know a lot of Bulls fans aren't so happy with this extension because of this, but he is now 195 and 205 in Chicago and 438 and 362 overall in 10 seasons as an NBA head coach. Billy had 1 year left on his current deal with the Bulls. This past season, as we all know, he guided Chicago to a 39 and 43 record, finishing ninth in the East and losing in the play-in tournament for the third year in a row. The Bulls just have that singular playoff appearance under Billy Donovan in his tenure as the head coach there, and that came in a series against the Milwaukee Bucks where they lost in 5 games in the first round. So this coach is definitely decorated when it comes to his past and what he's provided throughout his basketball career as a coach. Billy Donovan, who won back-to-back national championships during his 19 seasons at Florida, will also be enshrined into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame during ceremonies on September 5th and 6th. This coming fall. He did leave the college ranks, as we all know, to coach the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2015 before eventually joining Chicago in 2020 here. He started his coaching career way back in 1989 as an assistant for Rick Pitino. The legendary Rick Pitino is where he started his coaching aspirations there. So that's kind of how the strength in the basketball circles started for Billy Donovan, and that's with Rick Pitino way back when there. So ultimately, you guys know how I feel about Billy Donovan. I'm excited about this move. I think it makes a lot of sense when you want to line up the general manager in the front office in terms of the head coach there, and you have the same parallel plans in terms of rebuilding this roster. I know that's gotten off to a slow start, and that's where the critics are going to come out when it comes to giving Billy Donovan this extension. I could see both sides, honestly. It's been a disappointing tenure to this point. And then you look at Sam Presti and what he's done in Oklahoma City. It's been talked about time and time again. Why would Billy Donovan up and leave that situation when you look at where the Oklahoma City Thunder are now? Is that just a coincidence as well, or is that because of Billy leaving? Is Oklahoma City better off? That's a question that I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to look at in their displeasure with Billy Donovan and receiving that extension. On the other side of it, you have a guy who's going to get a really young team moving forward, potentially one of the younger rosters in the NBA. He's good at developing young talent. I've talked about this from the jump. So it's not a horrible decision when it comes to that. I think Noah Senge is going to benefit from having Billy Donovan around for the near future. I think a lot of these young guys thrive on having a coach who really is good in that environment and bringing young guys through the league in their first couple of years there. So just wanted to touch upon that to start today's show. I wanted to switch gears here. There was another ESPN reporter who gave out offseason grades to this point. Kevin Pelton of ESPN gave his grade for the Chicago Bulls, pegging them a C- up to this point in the offseason. I'm not surprised at all with that grade. He gave the biggest plus point being Trey Jones coming back on that 3-year, $24 million extension with that team option in the final year. Okoro also seen as a strong move from Pelton here. For a solid move for the Bulls in terms of what they're going to do moving forward. So those are the pluses he gave in Trey Jones and Isaac Okoro and moving off of Lonzo Ball there. However, the displeasure with the C- grade came with the Bulls largely staying content and staying the course to the 3 play-in tournaments in a row to this point. And Pelton discussed how high he was on Asenge, but he thinks the Bulls could have been even better served making the same draft night deal that Atlanta did with the New Orleans Pelicans there. And just to rewind here to give you guys a refresher, the Pelicans ended up receiving the number 13th overall pick, which was used to select Derek Queen, the center out of Maryland, technically drafted by Atlanta, but immediately sent to New Orleans. And then Atlanta received the number 23 overall pick, which was used on Asa Newell, a local product from Georgia there, a guy I profiled a ton leading up to the draft, as well as an unprotected 2026 first-round pick, specifically the more favorable of New Orleans or Milwaukee's first-round selection there. So in short, Atlanta traded down from pick 13 to 23, and in return also gained a valuable unprotected future first-rounder. That's what he hinted at the Bulls and what they should have kind of taken that approach rather than taking a stab on a young, raw talent, Noah Senge, at 12th overall there. So C- is, it seems fitting at this point in the offseason for the Bulls, disappointingly, but I kind of agree with this grade up to this point. I do, like I said, I agree with the Billy Donovan extension. I talked about this way back to when the news came out that the Knicks were approaching him, but as far as what the Bulls have done this offseason, I think finally closing that deal with Josh Giddey at some point here is going to help that grade. Obviously, him signing that qualifying offer for the 1 year would drop that grade significantly, in my opinion. So we'll see how things shake out the rest of this offseason. I'll keep you guys up to date on everything Chicago Bulls as we move into the next weeks and months of this offseason leading into camp. So I wanted to just kind of touch upon that article there. Switching gears to a G League star for the Bulls, he is rumored to have now decided to go overseas, and that's former Chicago Bulls center and UConn star Adam Sanogo. He's leaving the NBA to sign a new contract and play with the Trapani Shark in the Italian Liga Basket Serie A there. So he's going to go take his talents to Italy. Sanogo, who was a starter and the leading scorer and rebounder on UConn's national championship team in 2023, played on a two-way deal with the Bulls this past season. He'll definitely have the opportunity to earn more minutes and a larger role with the Italian team with an eye to returning to the NBA in the future at some point. Sanogo signed with the Bulls as an undrafted free agent. He only appeared in 13 games for Chicago over the last 2 seasons. He averaged 3.5 points a game to go along with nearly 3.5 boards a game and just 6.7 minutes per contest. So had a very limited role with the NBA group, but he did show out in the G League, showed plenty of promise in his time with the Windy City Bulls. He averaged 22 points and 12.7 rebounds in just over 30 minutes of action across 29 games in 2023-24, which earned him a spot on the All-NBA G League third team. So, when you look at this guy's numbers with the Windy City Bulls, he put up big-time statistics, and he was a really big impact player for that G League unit for the Bulls. In 11 games in the G League this past year, the 23-year-old also averaged 16.2 points a game to go along with 10 rebounds a game. So another solid stat line when it comes to his numbers in the G League this past year. As far as the Trapani Shark, this past season they finished 22-8, and they features what could be a familiar name to some fans and former NBA guard Langston Galloway, who played for 7 different teams across 8 seasons in the NBA. So just some news on a Bulls G League standout, Adam Sanogo, or former standout. He's going to take his talents over to Italy there. Just wanted to throw that news nugget out there at you guys. And then also wanted to cap off today's show by talking about a report I spoke to on Friday. But if the Bulls are unable to get a trade done, the Bulls are likely to release Vucevic, and Yahoo Sports reiterated and confirmed that report this weekend. That if they're unable to move him this offseason, that the Bulls are probably leaning towards releasing Vucevic and buying out his deal so that he can go and take his 34-year-old career to a contending team. As a 34-year-old player, he's nearing the end of his tenure in the NBA or shifting towards that back half of his career. So I think playing for a contending team makes a ton of sense for Vooch. I've talked about this a ton in the past few weeks, and the market has slowed significantly on him in terms of teams kind of approaching the Bulls to make a deal. So Yahoo Sports officially confirming that the Bulls are likely to release Vooch if a trade can't be finalized. That gives him the freedom to kind of go and sign with anybody of his choosing there ahead of this upcoming season. So again, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this Monday episode of Bulls Latest. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Billy Donovan extension. As far as Vooch, I know a lot of you are in the boat of wanting to keep him. Interesting enough, I've seen it a lot in the comments, and that's not really surprising because of the productivity we've seen from him over the past few years. It just comes down to the direction of this organization and where they're going to move going forward in terms of bringing in youth and continuing that movement there. So overall, a lot of things happening with the Bulls. I'll keep you guys in tune with all that as we move forward. And as always, I want to thank you again for joining me on Bulls Latest. We will see you all next time.